CEO Lin Hao had planned three things for that Tuesday morning. Visit his father. Sign 2 contracts. Leave. He did not plan for the rest of his life to change in a hospital lobby at 11:43 a.m. He was already halfway to the exit, phone in hand, assistant speed walking beside him listing the afternoon's schedule, when something made him stop. Not a sound. Not a name. Just that feeling, the specific, irrational feeling of a man who turns around for no reason and finds exactly the thing he was never supposed to see again. Sarah Moses was standing 30 feet away. She looked the same. That was the unfair part. 6 years, and she still stood the way she always stood, straight-backed, chin slightly up, like someone who had learned to carry weight without letting it show in her posture. She was in scrubs, a patient folder pressed against her chest, talking to a colleague. She hadn't seen him yet. Lin Hao's assistant was still talking. The contracts, the 2 p.m. call, And then Lin Hao saw the boy beside her. 5 years old, round face, his mother's mouth, and around his neck, resting against his small chest, the gold dragon pendant that Lin had clasped around Sarah's neck himself 6 years ago, with his own 2 hands, the night he told her she carried his family now. His assistant stopped talking mid-sentence because Lin Hao had stopped walking entirely. The folder slipped from Sarah's hands before she realized it was gone. Medical papers went everywhere. School records followed. One photograph skated across the polished floor like it had somewhere important to be and stopped directly against Lin Hao's shoe. He bent down. A voice smiled up at him from the photograph. Same boy. Same pendant. And on his left cheek, so clear it could have been stamped there, the Lin family dimple. The mark his father carried. His grandfather. Every Lin man going back 4 generations. Lin Hao's chest did something it had no business doing in a public hospital lobby. Behind her reception desk, Fong Wei, who had worked that front desk for 11 years, who knew the name of every consultant, the blood type of half the board members, and the romantic history of at least 3 department heads, leaned forward on both elbows and watched. She had not blinked in 45 seconds. She slowly pushed a box of tissues toward the junior nurse beside her without moving her eyes from the lobby. The junior nurse looked at the tissues. Looked at the lobby. What's happening? Fong Wei held up one finger. Sure. But what? The pendant just moved, Fong Wei whispered. 6 years this lobby has been boring. 6 years. Do not talk to me right now. The boy noticed Lin Hao first. He tugged his mother's sleeve. Sarah looked down. He pointed directly across the lobby with the complete confidence of a child who has not yet learned that pointing is rude. Mummy. Sarah turned. The moment she saw Lin Hao, every single thing she had spent 6 years building, the distance, the indifference, the carefully constructed version of herself that had moved on, healed, was completely fine, cracked straight down the middle. She grabbed her son's hand, gathered the papers she could reach, left the rest, walked to the elevators. Fast. Not running, but the kind of walking that is only 1 bad second away from it. Sarah. He called out, but she did not stop. The elevator opened. She stepped in with the boy. The doors began to close. A hand appeared between them. The sensors pulled the doors back open. Lin Hao stepped inside. 3 people. 1 secret. 1 elevator going nowhere fast. The boy looked up at Lin Hao. Looked at his mother. Looked at Lin Hao again. He was doing the face, the small, serious face of a child running calculations his mother had no idea he was capable of. Then he said, "Are you 2 in a fight?" Lin Hao looked down at him. Because Mummy makes that face when she's in a fight. She made it at the landlord last month. He paused thoughtfully. He gave us 2 weeks. Sarah closed her eyes. Lin Hao said, very carefully, "We're not in a fight." The boy nodded slowly, unconvinced. Okay. He looked up at the elevator buttons. Can I press the floor? Zion. Sarah started. I just want to press it. Lin Hao crouched down to his level and pointed to the button for the ground floor. Zion pressed it with great ceremony, both hands, like he was launching something important. Thank you, Lin Hao said. Zion looked at him very directly. You have the same dimple as me. Lin Hao's jaw tightened. And the same one as Grandpa Dragon. Zion touched his own cheek helpfully. Right here. Same place. Sarah's head turned slowly. Who? Grandpa Dragon. In rehabilitation. He never told me his real name, so I named him. Zion shrugged. He didn't say no. Lin Hao looked at Sarah. Sarah looked at the elevator doors. The elevator dinged. Ground floor. The doors opened, and Sarah walked out so fast she left a small wind behind her. Lin Hao stood in the elevator holding the photograph. Behind him, Zion pressed the button again just to see the light come on. Enjoying the story? Click on the subscribe button and join this family so you don't miss out on our next story. Back at her desk, Fong Wei exhaled for the first time in 3 minutes. The junior nurse was gripping her arm. What happened? What happened? I couldn't see. 5 years old, Fong Wei said. Same dimple. Same pendant. And she named the grandfather Grandpa Dragon. She picked up her pen. The grandfather. In VIP rehabilitation. She tapped the pen against the desk twice. The grandfather, who has the same dimple. Tap. Tap. Who is the grandfather in VIP rehabilitation, Xiaolu? The junior nurse's eyes went wide. That's Chairman Lin, Fong Wei said simply. Xiaolu grabbed her arm harder. Fong Wei. I know. That means the boy is. I know. And Lin Hao doesn't know he's been. I know. Fong Wei set her pen down, folded her hands. And the wedding is in 23 days. They stared at each other. Should we tell someone? Xiaolu whispered. Fong Wei looked deeply offended. Tell who? And lose the best story this lobby has ever produced. She straightened her lanyard. We observe. We document. We do not interfere. She paused. I might need a snack, though. This could go long. Sarah got Zion home. She barely remembered the drive. One moment she was in the hospital parking garage, hands shaking slightly on the steering wheel. The next she was unlocking her apartment door, and Zion was already dropping his school bag and asking what was for dinner with the energy of someone whose entire world had not just tilted sideways. She made jollof rice on autopilot, perfectly seasoned. Didn't taste it once. Zion ate with great focus and enthusiasm, gave her a full review. It's good today, Mummy. You didn't burn the bottom. And then looked up from his plate with the expression that always meant trouble. The man from the hospital. Sarah kept her eyes on her food. He looked at me for a long time. Lots of people look at children. Not like that. Zion pointed at his own face. He looked like he recognized me, but didn't know where from. Like when you see someone from a dream. He picked up his fork. Do you know him? Eat your food. I am eating my food. I'm also talking. I can do both. He chewed thoughtfully. He looked sad. She didn't answer. Zion put down his fork. This was serious. Zion never voluntarily put down his fork mid-meal. Mummy. He had Grandpa Dragon's dimple. And mine. And yours is different, so it didn't come from you. Sarah looked up at her son. 5 years old. 5 years old, and sitting across from her like a tiny barrister building a case. Bedtime, she said. Zion recognized a verdict when he heard one. He picked up his fork, finished his rice in record time, allowed himself to be bathed and tucked in without complaint, which alone should have told her he was thinking very hard. She kissed his forehead, turned off the light, got to the door. Mummy. She stopped. Is the man my dad? She stood with her hand on the door frame, back to him, for 3 full seconds. Go to sleep, Zion. She closed the door. And then she sat on the edge of her own bed in the dark and let herself remember the things she had spent 6 years not remembering. Director Chen's office. His voice, so gentle, so sorry, the way a man sounds when he's delivering news he wishes he didn't have to. She had been 3 months pregnant, 24 years old, and sitting very straight because she had decided she would not cry in front of him. Lin Hao asked me to speak for him. He's chosen his family. He's chosen the company. The child complicates things the family isn't willing to navigate. He wanted you to hear it from someone kind. She had believed him. Of course, she had believed him. Why would his father's most trusted director lie? What would he gain? She thought about Lin Hao's face in the elevator. The way he looked at Zion, not like a man confronting evidence, like a man seeing something he had been quietly grieving without a name for it. That was not the face of someone who knew. Sarah pressed her palms flat against her knees and sat very still in the dark. Because if Lin Hao hadn't known, if Lin Hao hadn't sent Chen to tell her all that years ago, then who, exactly, had that gentle, sorry-faced man been protecting? Across Shanghai, Lin Hao sat at his desk with the photograph in front of him and did the only math that mattered. 6 years. A 5-year-old boy. His pendant. His dimple. His family's mark going back 4 generations. And Sarah's face in that elevator. Not the face of a woman caught. The face of a woman who had been surviving something for a very long time. He thought about the last night he saw her. How she'd been laughing at something stupid he said, and then suddenly gone quiet and touched his face and said, "I have something important to tell you tomorrow. Not tonight. Tomorrow." He had kissed her forehead and said okay. Tomorrow never came. By morning, his phone had 12 messages from Director Chen explaining that Sarah had left, that she'd chosen someone else, that she had asked for no contact, that it would be better for everyone if Lin Hao respected her decision and moved forward. He had spent 6 years being moved forward. He looked at the photograph. Zion grinned back at him, gap-toothed, dragon pendant around his neck, completely unbothered. "Grandpa Dragon," the boy had said. "In rehabilitation." Lin Hao picked up his phone. His father's contact sat at the top of his recent calls. He put the phone down, picked it back up. There were 2 questions, and he didn't know which one scared him more. The first was whether Director Chen, his father's man, 30 years of loyalty, the man who planned his wedding with his new wife, who managed this company, who had shaped the last 6 years of Lin Hao's life, had lied. The second was what it meant if he had. Lin Hao looked at the clock. 11:52 p.m. Tomorrow morning, he was going to Director Chen's office. No appointment. No warning. No time to build a story. Because somebody had stolen 6 years from him. And Lin Hao had just found the receipt. Lin Hao was in Director Chen's office by 7:50 a.m. Not 8. Not when the building officially opened and the assistants arrived and the coffee machine started and everything returned to the comfortable rhythm of a normal working day. 7:50, before Chen's secretary had taken her coat off, before the blinds on the 34th floor had been pulled up, before Director Chen, a tall, silver-haired man of 62, who had served the Lin family for 3 decades, who wore the same brand of Italian leather shoes every single day and chose every word before releasing it the way a man checks a weapon before firing, had settled into his chair. Lin Hao was already sitting in the chair across from his desk when Chen walked in. Chen stopped in the doorway. His secretary appeared behind him, mouthing, "I'm sorry, he was here before I." Chen gave her the smallest nod. She disappeared. The door closed. Chen looked at Lin Hao sitting in his office at 7:50 a.m. with no appointment and no expression on his face, and understood immediately that something had changed. Not shifted. Not moved. Changed. The way the air in a room changes when a window breaks. He set his briefcase down, took his seat, folded his hands on the desk, the gesture of a man settling in for patience. "Lin Hao, you should have called ahead." Lin Hao put Zion's photograph on the desk. Chen looked down at it. The 5-year-old boy. The dragon pendant. The Lin family dimple sitting on a child's cheek like a signature nobody had authorized. Something moved behind Chen's eyes. Very fast. Very small. Then it was gone, pressed down under 30 years of practice. "I can explain." "Who is he?" Lin Hao's voice was completely flat. "Lin Hao, what happened with Sarah was complicated. She was not." "Who is he?" Lin cut him off. The office was very quiet. Chen exhaled slowly. "He's a child who. He has our pendant." Lin Hao pointed at the boy's neck. "He has our mark." He pointed at the dimple. "He is 5 years old. And his mother is Sarah Moses, the woman you told me left the country 6 years ago." He leaned forward slightly. "So, I am going to ask you one more time, and I want the truth this time. Chenzong, did Sarah ever once tell you herself that that child was not mine?" The 34th floor was so quiet Lin Hao could hear the city 40 floors below them. Chen looked at the photograph for a long moment. Then he leaned back in his chair, and something in his posture changed. Not guilt. The man had not carried guilt about this for a single day. Something more like a calculation being completed. The moment when a man who has been managing a situation decides the situation has outgrown management, and it is time to simply be honest about what he did and why. No, Chen said. She never told me that. Lin Hao went very still. I wrote it, Chen continued, in the same measured voice. I assessed the situation, and I made a decision, and I wrote the conclusion I needed, and I delivered it to your father, and I delivered it to her. He looked directly at Lin Hao. Because it was the right decision for this family. You. Lin Hao stopped. Started again. You lied. I protected you. She was pregnant. She was a nurse. Chen's voice stayed completely level. The level of a man who has rehearsed this argument inside his own head for 6 years and believes it. No family. No background. No standing. You were 26 years old and standing at the beginning of everything this company was about to become. She would have attached herself to this family, and the board would never have respected. She wasn't attaching herself. Lin Hao's voice was dangerously quiet. I loved her. You were young. I loved her. He said it again, slower, each word placed separately because Chen did not seem to understand what those words meant. I was going to tell my father. I was going to. I know what you were going to do, Chen said. That is precisely why I handled it when I did. The room did something it had never done in 30 years of Lin Hao sitting in it. It became a place where Lin Hao understood, fully and completely, what kind of man had been standing beside his family all this time. Not a loyal man. Not a protective one. A man who had looked at a 24-year-old woman carrying his child and decided, alone, in his own mind, that she did not qualify, and then built a wall around that decision with 30 years of trust, and called it service. She raised him alone, Lin Hao said. Chen said nothing. 5 years. She raised my son alone because you told her I didn't want him. I told her what was necessary. Lin Hao stood up. He picked up the photograph, looked at it for one moment, his son grinning up at him, gap-toothed, entirely unbothered, with a pendant around his neck that had been in the Lin family for 4 generations and had found its way home anyway. He put it back in his jacket pocket. The wedding, he said. Chen's eyes moved slightly. Call it off. Lin Hao. The merger depends on. Call it off, Chen Zong. Still that quiet voice. The quiet that was louder than anything else in the room. Or I will walk into that conference room this afternoon and tell the board exactly what you did and why, and you will not have a seat at that table or any other table in this company ever again. He paused. Your choice. But make it before noon. He walked to the door. Stopped. And when I tell my father, Lin Hao said without turning around, because I will tell him, understand that the 30 years you spent building his trust will not be enough. Not for this. He left. Chun sat in his office alone. Outside the window, Shanghai was fully awake, fully moving, 40 floors of morning light and noise and the business of the world continuing. Chun looked at the empty chair across from his desk. Then he looked at his phone. He sat for a very long time before he picked it up. Lin Hao's fiancée, Mei Xiao, Director Chen's only daughter, 28 years old, tall, composed, educated at the London School of Economics, a woman who had been raised to understand that marriages and families like theirs were architecture before they were anything else, was having breakfast in the hotel suite she had booked for wedding preparation meetings when her phone rang. She looked at the screen. Her father. She answered. Baba. I was just going to call you. The florist needs a decision on. Mei Xiao. Chen's voice was different. She had known her father's voice for 28 years, and she had never heard it make the sound it was making now. Not tired. Something undertired. I need to talk to you about something. Mei Xiao set her coffee cup down. The wedding, Chen said. There may need to be a delay. She was quiet for 3 seconds. What happened? Something from the past has. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Something has come up that Lin Hao needs to address. What's something? He paused again. Longer. A child. Meisho sat very still in the hotel suite with its view of the Huangpu River and its vase of white peonies that someone had arranged that morning, and its untouched plate of toast.
"Whose child?" she said.
Her father didn't answer immediately, which was its own answer. Meisho had known, in the way that women who are paying attention always know, that Lin Hao did not love her. He was considerate. He was present. He attended every dinner and every function and every planning meeting her mother arranged, and he had never once looked at her across a table the way a man looks at a woman he is not performing courtesy for. She had decided, 6 months ago, that this was acceptable, that warmth could grow where love did not yet exist, that she was marrying a good man, a capable man, a future worth building. She had not known she was marrying a man who was already a father. "How old?" she said. Chen's silence was 3 seconds long.
5, he said.
Meisho looked at the white peonies. 5 years old. The wedding was in 3 weeks, which meant that somewhere in this city, there was a 5-year-old child who had been alive for the entire time she had been planning a future with his father, and she had not known he existed, and Lin Hao had not known he existed, and the reason neither of them had known.
"Baba," she said.
Her voice was very controlled. The voice of a woman who has just understood something and is choosing, very deliberately, how to hold it. "What did you do?" The silence this time was the longest of all. 2 days passed. Lin Hao did not call Sarah. He had her number. His assistant had found it in under 20 minutes because his assistant was efficient and because Lin Hao had asked with a specific tone that meant this is not a task, this is a priority. He had the number.
He had not used it.
He was trying to figure out what you say to a woman you loved, who you let disappear, whose son has your face, whose 5 years of single parenthood exist because a man you trusted decided she wasn't good enough, and you never questioned it. There was no version of that conversation that started cleanly. He sent a message. 1 line. "I need to speak with you.
Please."
Sarah read it at 11 p.m. She put her phone face down on the bedside table.
Picked it back up.
Read it again. Typed tomorrow.
Hospital courtyard.
East Wing. 12 p.m. My time, my terms. Sent it before she could rethink the whole thing. Chairman Lin Hao's father, the 70-year-old man recovering from a heart procedure in room 412 of the VIP rehabilitation wing, was in the middle of refusing his lunch when Zion walked in. This was already an improvement on the last 20 minutes, which had involved 2 nurses, 1 nutritionist, and a heated debate about whether a man who had built a company from nothing should be forced to eat steamed vegetables against his will. The nutritionist had been winning. Then Zion arrived, and everyone immediately became less important. Grandpa Dragon. Zion dropped his school bag by the door, walked straight to the bedside, and looked at the untouched tray. He looked at Chairman Lin. He looked back at the tray. "Why haven't you eaten?" "It tastes like punishment. It's broccoli." "I know what it is." Zion pulled the visitor's chair close, sat down, picked up the fork, and held it out. Chairman Lin stared at the fork. "I'm not a child," he said. "Then stop acting like one," Zion said. "Open." The rehabilitation nurse by the door made a sound she quickly converted into a cough. Chairman Lin, a man who had reduced grown executives to nervous silence just by adjusting his glasses, opened his mouth and ate the broccoli. Zion nodded, satisfied. Set the fork down, reached into his school bag, and pulled out his drawing pad. "I made you something," he said, tearing out a page and placing it on the bed beside the tray. Chairman Lin picked it up. A crayon drawing. The hospital building in the background, wobbly but recognizable. 4 figures standing in front of it. A small boy, a woman, a tall man, an old man. All holding hands. All smiling with the enormous crayon smiles that Zion put on every person he drew, like sadness was simply a thing he hadn't included because it didn't occur to him. Each figure had a small circle on their left cheek. Chairman Lin looked at the circles. The old man's circle. The tall man's circle. The small boy's circle. He had seen that dimple every morning in the mirror for 70 years. "Who are these people?" he asked, though something in him had already started to understand. Zion pointed at each figure without hesitation. "That's me. That's Mummy. That's you." He paused at the tall man. "And that's..." The door opened. "Zion." Sarah, who is currently wearing the face of a woman who has searched 4 floors of hospital for her son and has located him in the absolute last place she expected, stood in the doorway. She had her stethoscope around her neck and her hospital ID on her chest, and the specific expression of a mother whose relief and irritation had arrived simultaneously and were fighting for control of her face. "I have been looking for you for 20 minutes. I was visiting Grandpa Dragon," Zion said, completely unbothered. "You were supposed to be in the—" Sarah stepped into the room, looked at the old man in the bed, opened her mouth to finish the sentence, and stopped. Chairman Lin looked at her. 6 years ago, he had sat in his study while Director Chen, the man he had trusted for 30 years to handle things that needed handling, delivered a quiet, careful report about a young woman his son had been seeing. A nobody, Chen had said. A Nigerian nurse. No family standing. 3 months pregnant and looking to attach herself to the Lin name. He had handled it, he said, gently but firmly. She understood. She had agreed to leave.
It was done.
Chairman Lin had nodded and moved on because that was what men like him did. He had never asked to see her. Never asked her name beyond the surname. Never once looked at her face. But Chun had mentioned she worked at the hospital. And here was a woman in scrubs with a Nigerian face and a hospital ID and a 5-year-old boy beside her with the Lin family dimple sitting on his left cheek like a stamp. Chairman Lin's chest did something that had nothing to do with his heart procedure. He looked at the boy, then at the woman, then at the drawing still in his hands. 4 figures. 4 circles on 4 cheeks. A tall man whose face Zion had not yet named. The mathematics completed themselves in the space of 3 seconds. This was her. This was the girl Chun had made disappear. And that boy who had been walking into his room, who had bullied him into eating and drinking water and doing his physiotherapy, who had called him Grandpa Dragon with the complete confidence of a child who had decided they belonged somewhere might be his grandchild. Mummy. Zion held the drawing up helpfully. I drew us. Me, you, Grandpa Dragon, and Zion. Sarah's voice was very controlled. The kind of controlled that takes considerable effort. Her eyes had not left Chairman Lin. Get your bag. But I haven't shown him the bag.
Now.
Zion looked between his mother and the old man. He had the expression of a child who could feel something large happening and couldn't identify what it was. He got his bag. Sarah picked up his drawing pad from the bed, tucked it under his arm, took his hand. Thank you for looking after him, she said to Chairman Lin. Her voice was steady in the way that things are steady when someone is holding them very deliberately in place. He enjoys the visits. She turned toward the door. Miss Moses.
She stopped.
Her back to him. Chairman Lin had been a man of few apologies in his life. He had built a company and a family and a reputation on the understanding that decisions were made, executed, and moved past. You did not apologize for decisions. You made better ones next time. He looked at the drawing in his hands. The 4 circles. The 4 smiles. The tall man with no name yet. He started. Sarah turned her head just slightly. Not fully. Just enough to show she was listening and not at all interested in making this easy. He is welcome, Chairman Lin said finally. Whenever he wants to come. The door is always open. It was not enough. He knew it was not enough. It was the smallest possible version of what needed to be said, and they both knew it. Sarah looked at him for one long moment. Then she nodded once, the nod of a woman filing something away for later, and walked out with her son. Zion looked back over his shoulder as they left. Same time next time. Grandpa Dragon. The door closed. Chairman Lin sat alone with a crayon drawing of 4 people and the specific silence of a room that has just held something enormous and not handled it properly. He pressed the call button. When the nurse appeared, he said, Get me my son. Not his assistant. Him.
Now.
Lin Hao arrived at his father's room 14 minutes later. He had been in the car park already, sitting in his car, staring at Sarah's last message, canteen. Ground floor. 1 p.m., 20 minutes. And trying to organize 6 years of things to say into something that would fit in 20 minutes. He walked into room 412 and found his father sitting up in bed holding a child's drawing and looking like a man who had just watched something irreversible happen and understood it was his fault. Lin Hao looked at the drawing. 4 crayon figures, circles on 3 cheeks, and the tall man in the middle whose face Zion had drawn looking forward, waiting. She was here, Chairman Lin said. Lin Hao looked at his father. She came in looking for the boy. She walked through that door, and the old man stopped, set the drawing down on his lap. I knew who she was the moment I saw her. 6 years, and I knew immediately. He looked up. She looked at me the way a person looks at someone who owes them something that cannot be repaid. Because you do, Lin Hao said. Yes. You and Chen both. Lin Hao stepped further into the room. His voice was quiet, the dangerous kind of quiet. She was 24 years old. She was pregnant and alone in the city, and the 2 men I trusted most looked at her and decided she was inconvenient, and neither of you thought of how I'll feel. Chairman Lin said nothing. I have a son, Lin Hao said. 5 years old. He has been sitting in that chair beside your bed for 2 days calling you Grandpa Dragon, and neither of you knew what you were to each other because of a decision you made in 5 minutes 6 years ago. The old man's jaw moved. No sound came out. I'm going downstairs to speak to Sarah now, Lin Hao said. And tomorrow morning, I want Chen fired. He walked to the door.
Stopped.
You said sorry to me once in my entire life. I was 9 years old, and you broke my model plane by accident. That was the last time. He turned and looked at his father. You have much bigger things to apologize for now if she doesn't forgive me. I suggest you think very carefully about how.
He left.
Chairman Lin sat in the room alone. He looked at the drawing for a long time. The 4 smiling figures, the circles on their cheeks, Zion's enormous crayon grins on every face because Zion drew people the way he saw them, the way they could be, not the way they were currently failing to be. The old man set the drawing on his bedside table. Then he did something he had not done in 30 years of making decisions and moving forward without looking back. He sat with what he had done. He sat with all of it. And he let it be as heavy as it actually was. Downstairs, Lin Hao walked into the canteen at 12:58 p.m. Sarah was already there. Corner table, away from the lunch crowd, her hands around a cup of tea. She wasn't drinking. She had changed out of her scrubs into her own clothes, dark jeans, a burgundy top, which meant she had made a decision about this meeting. She had not come as the doctor. She had come as herself. Lin Hao sat down across from her. For a moment neither of them spoke. The canteen moved around them. Trays clattering, someone laughing too loudly at a table near the window, the ordinary noise of a building full of people whose lives were not currently being reorganized. 20 minutes, Sarah said. Start. Lin Hao looked at her. I went to Chen yesterday morning, he said. I put Zion's photograph on his desk and I asked him directly whether you ever told him yourself that Zion wasn't mine. Sarah's hands tightened slightly around the cup. He admitted it, Lin Hao said. Not in those words, but he admitted it. He said he made the decision because you weren't the right fit for this family. No connections. No standing. Those were his reasons. He paused. He chose my future without asking me, and he chose yours without asking you, and he spent 6 years making sure neither of us could compare notes. Sarah looked at the table. I spoke to my father this morning, Lin Hao continued. He knew what Chen did 6 years ago. Not everything, but enough. He let it happen and he never checked.
He stopped.
I am not defending him. I'm telling you because you deserve to know the full picture. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Your father, she said. He was just in that room with Zion. I know. He had no idea.
No.
She looked up. Neither did Zion. Her voice shifted slightly on her son's name. He just saw a lonely old man in a hospital bed and decided he needed looking after. That's just, she stopped. That's just who Zion is. Lin Hao looked at her. He's extraordinary. Don't. She shook her head slightly. Don't say things like that right now. I need to be thinking clearly. Okay. I need to know what you want, she said. Not what you feel. What you actually want. Because Zion is 5 years old, and he doesn't recover from people who show up and then leave. So if you're here because you feel guilty, go home. Guilt is not a reason to walk into a child's life. Lin Hao held her gaze. I'm here because he's my son. And because you are, he stopped himself. Because he's my son. And he deserves to know that. Sarah studied his face for a long moment, looking for the version of him that Chun had described 6 years ago. The man who chose his family and his company and had someone else deliver the news. She couldn't find him. That didn't mean she was ready to say so. I'll think about it, she said. She stood up, picked up her cup. That's all I can give you today. I'll think about it. She walked away. Lin Hao sat at the corner table alone. 18 minutes. She had given him 18 of the 20. He looked at the canteen around him. Ordinary Tuesday. Trays and noise, and a building full of people going about their lives. He thought about a 5-year-old boy who had walked into his grandfather's hospital room and taken one look at a lonely old man and simply decided to stay. Lin Hao picked up his phone. He had to make sure Chen paid for what he did. Chen was fired by 9 a.m. No meeting. No conference room. No folders laid out like evidence because Lin Hao was done being methodical about this man. He walked into Chen's office, placed a termination letter on the desk, and said 4 words. Clear your things. Today. Chen looked at the letter. Then at Lin Hao. Then at 30 years of photographs on his office wall, company openings, family dinners, the Lin family, at every milestone Chen had positioned himself beside. Lin Hao. Chen started. Today, Chen Zong. Lin Hao left without closing the door. Mei Xiao had not spoken to Lin Hao in 4 days. She had needed the 4 days. Not to be dramatic about it. She was not a dramatic woman, but because finding out that the man you are 3 weeks from marrying has a 5-year-old son, a woman he actually loved, and a father who helped make the whole thing disappear requires a minimum of 4 days to process properly. She had spent those days at her mother's house, eating her mother's food, and thinking very carefully about what kind of woman she wanted to be in this situation. She had not arrived at an answer yet. On the 5th day, she went back to the hospital to collect something she had left in Chairman Lin's corridor during her first visit, which she had been too shaken to retrieve. A scarf. Pale gray. Her grandmother's. She found it exactly where she had dropped it, folded neatly on the windowsill at the end of the corridor. One of the nurses must have placed it there. She picked it up. She was turning to leave when she heard it. A small sound. From the hospital garden below the corridor window. She looked down without thinking. Zion was sitting on the low garden wall alone, school bag beside him, still in his uniform. His shoulders were pulled inward the way small children pull themselves inward when they're trying to be very quiet about something. He was crying, not loudly, not the way children cry when they want to be found. The quiet kind. The kind that happens when a child thinks nobody is watching and has decided to let themselves have it. Mei Xiao stood at the window for a moment. Then she went downstairs. She pushed open the garden door. Zion heard it and wiped his face quickly with his sleeve, the fast, practiced motion of a child who has learned to clean up emotion before adults notice it. Mei Xiao sat down on the wall beside him. Not too close. Just nearby. Bad day, she said. Zion looked at her. He recognized her from the corridor, the lady in the pale blue coat who had looked at him strangely, and walked away. He considered her for a moment with puffy eyes and the dignity of a 5-year-old who had been caught crying and was not going to admit it. I'm fine, he said. Okay. My friend at school said I don't have a dad, Zion said. He was looking at the garden wall, not at her. I said I did. He said prove it. He picked at a loose piece of concrete on the wall. I couldn't. Mei Xiao looked at this boy. The Lin dimple. The round face. The eyes that were currently doing their absolute best to be dry and not quite managing it. She had heard about him from her father. A child. A complication. A reason the wedding needed to happen quickly before things unraveled. She had never heard anyone describe him as a boy who sat alone in gardens and cried quietly because a classmate asked him to prove his father existed. What's his name? She asked. Your dad. Zion looked at her sideways. I don't know yet, he said, very quietly. Mummy says she's still thinking. Mei Xiao looked at the garden. She thought about Lin Hao's voice on the phone last week. Did you love her? And the way he had said yes. Not carefully, not diplomatically, just yes, clean and immediate, the most honest syllable she had heard from him in 6 months of careful, diplomatic, clean conversation. She had told herself she was fine with a marriage that started with respect and grew into warmth. She had told herself love was not the only architecture of a good life together. She had been telling herself a great many things. This boy on the wall had not told himself anything. He was just sitting here being 5 years old and fatherless and hoping his mother finished thinking soon. I think, Mei Xiao said slowly, that you're going to know his name very soon. Zion looked at her. How do you know? She folded her grandmother's scarf in her hands. Because people who love each other usually find their way back.
She paused.
It just sometimes takes the grown-ups a little longer. Zion considered this with great seriousness. Then he wiped his face one more time, straightened his back, and picked up his school bag with the energy of a child who has decided he is done being sad today. Are you a friend of Mummy's? He asked. Mei Xiao looked at him for a moment. Not yet, she said. Maybe one day. She stood up, squeezed his shoulder once, and walked back inside. She stood in the hospital corridor for a moment, scarf in hand, and made the decision she had been 4 days away from making. She called Lin Hao. He answered on the second ring. Mei Xiao. I'm ending the engagement, she said. Not harshly, not dramatically, just clearly, the way she did everything. Not because I'm angry. Because I just sat with your son in the garden, and he was crying because he couldn't prove to a classmate that his father existed. She paused. And I realized I have been one of the reasons that is still true. Lin Hao was quiet. Go fix it, she said. Both of you need to fix it. Another pause. He has very good eyes, your son. I know, Lin Hao said. Then don't make him wait any longer. She hung up, stood in the corridor. Then she walked out of the hospital and did not look back because she was not a woman who looked back, and because the next chapter of her own life was waiting somewhere that had nothing to do with this building. Lin Hao showed up at Sarah's apartment that evening. No assistant. A bunch of flowers in his hand. No prepared speech. Just him, standing at her door at 7 p.m. with Zion's drawing, the one from his father's room, for figures and 4 circles in his hand. Sarah opened the door, looked at him, looked at the drawing. He drew this for my father, Lin Hao said. Weeks ago. Before anyone knew anything. He held it out. He drew 4 people and put a circle on all of their cheeks and didn't think anything of it. He just drew his family the way he wanted it to be and waited. Sarah took the drawing. She looked at it for a long moment. The 4 smiling figures. The circles. Zion's handwriting at the bottom, not Dad? This time, but the version she hadn't seen yet, the one Zion had added after Lin Hao's last visit. Just Dad. No question mark. Her throat did something she was not going to let become crying at her own front door. He already decided, Lin Hao said quietly. Your son already decided. I need you to give me the chance to deserve it. Sarah looked at him. 6 years. A lie built by someone else. A man standing at her door holding a child's drawing at 7 p.m. because he had run out of better ways to say what he was trying to say. You hurt me, she said. I know. Not on purpose. But you did. You didn't even look for us. I did. God help me. I did, but you were nowhere to be found. Sarah looked at the drawing one more time. Zion has school at 7:30, she said finally. If you want to take him, you have to be here at 7. He takes 15 minutes to eat breakfast, and he will argue about his shoes, and if you're late he panics. She looked up. Those are the rules. Lin Hao looked at her. Something in his chest that had been pulled tight for 6 years shifted. 7 o'clock, he said. Don't be late. I won't. She held the door open. He stepped inside. From the corridor, Zion's voice arrived immediately. Mummy, who is it? And then small running feet, and then Zion appeared in the hallway, school bag inexplicably still on his back even at 7 p.m., and stopped when he saw Lin Hao. He looked at his mother. Then at Lin Hao. Then back. Are you staying for dinner? Zion asked. Lin Hao looked at Sarah. Sarah looked at the ceiling briefly, the look of a woman who had planned to have a longer, more dignified version of this conversation, and now would not be getting one. Yes, Lin Hao said. Zion processed this for approximately 1 second. Good, he said. Mummy made jollof rice, and she always makes too much. He turned and walked back to the kitchen with the complete practicality of a child for whom this was already settled. Come on then. It's getting cold. Lin Hao followed his son to the kitchen table. Sarah stood in the hallway for a moment, holding a drawing of 4 crayon people with circles on their cheeks, and let herself feel, for the first time in 6 years, that something was ending and something else was beginning, and the difference between those two things was a 5-year-old boy who had drawn them all together long before any of them were ready. She folded the drawing carefully, walked to the kitchen, sat down, and they were. Lin Hao couldn't help but look at his son every chance he got. He didn't want to rush him by introducing himself to him too early, but when he got the chance, he hugged him so passionately. 3 months later, it started small the way real things do. School runs, Saturday visits, homework that became competitive because Lin Hao was constitutionally incapable of letting a 5-year-old win a maths race, and Zion was constitutionally incapable of accepting that he had lost one. Nobody announced anything. Nobody declared anything. It simply accumulated. Dinners that ran long, phone calls for no reason, Zion falling asleep on Lin Hao's shoulder during a car ride home, and neither of them mentioning it after. Chairman Lin was discharged from hospital 6 weeks after Chin was fired. His recovery had accelerated sharply. The medical team attributed it to the physiotherapy program. Zion attributed it to the water. Chairman Lin said nothing and took credit for neither, and showed up at Sarah's apartment one Sunday afternoon with a tin of biscuits and the specific expression of a man who has rehearsed something and is going to say it before he loses his nerve. Sarah opened the door. Miss Moses, Chairman Lin said. I would like to apologize.
Properly.
If you will permit me. Sarah looked at this old man on her doorstep with his tin of biscuits and his rehearsed expression, and 6 years of things that could not be undone sitting between them. She opened the door wider.
Zion, she called.
Grandpa Dragon is here. The sound of running feet. Zion appeared, saw the biscuits, and immediately made a decision about his afternoon that had nothing to do with apologies or old men's consciences. Are those the almond ones? He asked. Yes, Chairman Lin said. Come in then. Zion grabbed his hand and pulled him inside. I'll get the plates. Chairman Lin looked back at Sarah over his shoulder, slightly helpless. Sarah pressed her lips together to keep from smiling.
Go, she said.
He'll have eaten half the tin before you get to the sofa. The old man allowed himself to be pulled into her apartment by his grandson, and Sarah stood in the doorway and watched them go, and thought that forgiveness was a strange thing, not a door you opened once, but one you kept choosing every day until one morning you woke up and realized that choosing had become something else entirely. They continued like that until one evening Lin Hao finally told her that he still loved her and would want them to be together. Sarah thought about it for a while, but her heart couldn't say no. How could her heart say no to her first love? The only man she's been with? She accepted to be his girlfriend again, and weeks later he proposed to her, and she said yes. Zion was the happiest. The wedding was on a Saturday in April.
Small.
40 people. A restaurant with good lighting and a table big enough for everybody, which was Zion's only official requirement as ring bearer, a position he had announced he was filling approximately 4 months before anyone had confirmed there was going to be a wedding. He had been right. He carried the rings with the focused gravity of someone performing the most important task in the building, which, in his professional opinion, he was. He did not drop them. He did look up halfway down the aisle. Then he saw both his dad and mom watching him, and gave them the specific nod of a person who has this completely under control, which made Lin Hao's jaw tighten against a smile, and made Sarah press her bouquet against her face for 3 seconds. Chairman Lin sat in the front row in a suit that Zion had approved after a thorough inspection. He had the drawing on his phone now, the 4 figures, the 4 circles, as his lock screen wallpaper, which was a thing nobody in the Lin family had ever expected to see, and which the rehabilitation nurses had photographed and sent to each other in a group chat titled Grandpa Dragon Update. At the reception, Zion ate jollof rice, pronounced it not as good as his mummy's, accepted a second plate anyway, and then climbed onto the seat between Lin Hao and Sarah, which was where he always sat, because it was where he had always belonged. And in the lobby of Shanghai Central Hospital, Mei watched, happy that she gave the poor child happiness.
The end.